Welcome back to Desertwood Days, and I am here with a talented musician, Scotty Spenner. Welcome, Scotty.
How do you do?
It's a pleasure to have you here
It's a
today.
pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. I am digging that brim you're wearing today.
It's a Stetson. I just got it.
Cool. That's
It's
nice.
my first public appearance.
It looks good.
With
My
it.
uncle's into the men that wears hats, so he loves his hat. He would really love that one. Scotty, you are a long time performer here in Arizona. I know. Where are you originally from?
I grew up in Wilmington, North Carolina.
Oh, I love that accent.
Well, thank you.
And so when did you get here to Arizona?
In 1980,
In 1980. So during that time, you were performing in North Carolina.
a little bit. I played all up and down the East Coast a bit in my late teens and early 20s. Back then, you could you could be in bars when you're 18.
When was it that Scotty decided that he wanted to be a musician?
I can tell you exactly. I don't know the date, but it was the night that the Beatles were on the Ed Sullivan Show in 1963, in the winter of '63. I knew that night what I wanted to do when I
Wow.
was 7 years old.
Oh my goodness.
Yep.
What was it about the Beatles?
The music, the pop music that was on the radio most of the time at that time on AM radio, which was about all those there was music on, was very bland in my
Mm.
opinion, and they were exciting. They were rocking out a little bit, and the girls are screaming. That really, even at seven, that appealed to me.
Oh my goodness. So you're 7 years old listening to the Beatles, you're excited. Have there been other inspirations, maybe someone in the family or that
No,
triggered that?
not at all. No
No?
musicians in my family
Really?
at all. That was pretty much it. That moment, that night.
Oh my
From then
goodness.
on, I was obsessed with the guitar.
Oh my goodness. So when someone becomes obsessed with a guitar, did you go and get training or were you self-taught?
Um, it took me 3 years to get my folks to buy me a real guitar. We would nail boards together and put fishing line on them and pretend like we were playing guitars. I did that for a few years. Excuse me. When I was 10 in '66, they got me a little piece of a cheap guitar, and I think I took lessons for maybe 4 months, and then from then on, I was on my own.
You're on your own.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. So when was the first time that you stepped foot on a stage to perform for someone?
Mm. The first time I played in public, a paying performance, was when I was 19 years old. I played a gig at the Holiday Inn, I believe, in Wilmington, North Carolina,
Wow.
playing just the rock
Uh-huh.
music of the day.
So how would you describe your style?
Well, that's a good question because I do a lot of because I've been playing for 55 years. I play a lot of different styles. So it would depend on the genre.
Oh.
I had a mentor named Wayne Bennett, who was Bobby Blue Bland's singer,
Oh.
guitarist, the singer Bobby Blue Bland, and he was kind of my friend and mentor while he was alive, and he advised me to not be only one kind of musician, but to learn to be a complete musician. So I love blues more than anything.
Uh-huh.
I love jazz. I love all the rock music I grew up with. I like classical guitar. I like pretty much anything that's got guitar
And you play all of those genres?
in it. Not well. I play, most people know me as a blues and rock and jazz guitarist. I dabble around in bluegrass and classical guitar. I like to challenge myself to play things that are way beyond my skill level.
Oh. So you play the guitar. Do you sing also?
Yes,
Okay. Okay. So do you play any other instruments besides the guitar?
I play mandolin, ukulele, and a little bit of harmonica.
Oh, okay. You got to have the harmonica in there with the blues.
Yes.
So tell us about your experience as a blues performer here in Arizona.
Well, I've loved blues since I was maybe 15 years old, but my real uh, best experience came in 1983 when the girlfriend I had at the time, a gal named Janova, we were at a jam session in Mesa, and she talked Big P. Pearson, the blues. He's an icon here in
Hmm.
Arizona. Into hiring me. He had just parted ways with his band. He was hiring a new band, and I played, and I think she talked him into hiring me. So he was. I think I was maybe 27 years old, and he hired me. I was just a kid, and I learned a lot working with him.
Wow.
A
You,
lot.
so you've been working with him for quite a few years.
About 37, 38 years.
That's
This is
awesome.
my third tour of duty with Pete.
Wow. You play a variety of music as you just stated, but why the blues?
Well, initially it was the Beatles,
Mm-hmm.
and that was in '63. '66, I got my first guitar, started playing. But by '68, music and everything was changing.
Right.
Society in general was changing. And even in the little segregated town I lived in North Carolina, we were starting to get exposed to more blues because a lot of the rock music that I was able to listen to, I would read interviews with those guys, and every one of those guys I listened to would say, they'd ask them what their what inspired them, and it was always American blues musicians.
Ah,
So I made it a point to try to find those records and listen to them and learn to play. Back then, some of the stuff was available, but most of it, they used to sell records in, department stores,
right.
drugstores, liquor stores,
Wow.
and the cutout bin was where all the really good old blues records were always in the cutout bins. I was always buying those because once I heard some of that, the original stuff, I was hooked. That was
Um,
the stuff it just resonated with me for some reason.
so who are some of your favorite blues greats?
Oh gosh, there's so many. Elmore James, Otis Rush, of course, Muddy Waters, BB King was probably
Mm.
the first blues records I ever bought when I was 13. Um, Albert King, Robert Johnson, Tampa Red. There's dozens of them.
You know what? I had never heard of Albert King. My mom listens to this station on Sundays. She
Mm-hmm.
came miss her show on the Sundays, and she mentioned Albert King, and she asked me if he was BB King's brother, and I'm like, I don't think so.
I think he used to kind of hint around that he was, but I don't think he was.
Okay, okay. You you I'm hooked on blues for a reason, but growing up and being inspired by blues and jazz, was that due to your environment, your culture, or I mean, how did you get so involved with blues, the performers and
That's a great question because it was anything but where I lived in the culture. Because in 1968, 69, 70, when I really was starting to seek that music out. The little town I lived in was pretty segregated. We had a lot of riots and all kinds of things happening. So I really had to seek that stuff out. But like I said, it was the rock musicians of that day that were in that whole culture, that whole guitar culture that kind of started with the Beatles. It exploded by then. And there were magazines and all kinds of things urging young guitarists like me to not only check out the rock guitarists, but the blues guitarist and the jazz guitarist and the classical guitarist and even the country and bluegrass guitar players. So I was kind of lucky to be in that golden age of that explosion, and all of a sudden all that stuff became available.
Wonderful.
Because everybody was wanting to educate themselves and be more versatile.
Right. So, Scotty, we were talking about the Beatles and the blues, and it made me think about this scene that I always loved from the James Brown movie, when the Beatles had to perform after James Brown, and they mentioned how he helped them to up the ante for their performance with his movement and his dancing. So I'd love that. Who in today's industry would you say remind you of any of the greats back in the day? Is there any artist that you would put into that category?
Wow, I don't know. I don't know any.
No.
I just love the old stuff.
You love the old.
There's I am of the opinion that the greatest blues singers that there were have already been with us.
Wow.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a lot of really good players, but the greats are the old guys.
So with blues and jazz, would you say that it's people in your era um, that's keeping it alive, or are there other means that's keeping it alive?
That's an interesting question. I think there are a lot of people from my era keeping it alive, but the whole thing with live music is changing now. The whole thing with playing musical instruments is changing. So I think there's some younger people taking it up, but I think I wouldn't say it's dying out, but it's definitely we're definitely I think not only music, but I think our whole culture has kind of hit a wall in it. And I don't mean to sound pessimistic, but I think in a way there's going to be new stuff that's going to happen. Things are kind of stalled out.
And I think that's already occurring because we had an artist a couple of days ago that mentioned I can't think of the name, but they're mentioning different terminology. They call giving it different names. It may be some of the same stuff, same feel to it, but they're giving it a new name.
Yeah, everything's changing. The way people make music, the way music's recorded, the whole live things changed now because of COVID.
Right.
So everything's going through this radical transformation.
So, as a performer yourself, do you utilize social media yourself, or do you use any of do perform live on social media?
You know, that's a good question too. During COVID, I did.
Oh, okay.
Because I wasn't playing at all.
Oh.
I went from teaching 4 days a week to teaching for a short time, not at all. And performing, I went from playing average 2 or 3 nights every week to nothing. So I was performing on Facebook.
Really? So how do you feel about social media? Is it something that you will continue to use?
You know, I I tried to embrace it for a while, and I did, but the sheer numbers of people, you just kind of get lost in the shuffle. There's
Mm,
so many people playing music that I don't spend I don't utilize as much as I used to. I I mention when I'm performing, I put a post up for that. That's about it.
what is the difference? How do you feel when you're doing a live performance?
Oh, there's just nothing like that. When that's happening and you're getting that feedback from the audience, it's I don't even have the words to describe it. It's so wonderful when the band's cooking, everything's happening, the audience is with you, the singer,
Mm,
and I got thinking of
mm-hmm.
Big Pete now, and he just turned 85 a month ago.
Wow.
Um,
And still performing.
yeah, but when
Wonderful.
the band's like in sync with him, he's happy, he's emoting and singing strong, the audience is responding. It's just incredible.
So do you guys still go through all the things of having I want to say rehearsals and I mean, do you guys do all that stuff? Are you a band that work together and maybe perform at different venues together?
Oh, definitely. Um, we play so much and we've played so long that we don't rehearse a lot. And sometimes Pete will call a rehearsal and we'll learn some new material. Or if we get a new member of the band, we
Mm,
need to break them in and get them comfortable. We'll
right,
rehearse then. So
right.
we rehearse once in a while, but not every week.
So you're not only a musician that goes out and perform, you're also a teacher.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I've been teaching. As another thing I've been doing a long time. My first job when I was 16 years old was working the counter and teaching guitar lessons at Finkelstein's music store in Wilmington, North Carolina. I was just a kid. That was my first job. I'm still doing the same thing. And I teach at a place called Strum University up near Deer Valley Airport now. I teach there 4 days a week, and I love teaching.
And what are you teaching?
I teach guitar primarily, and also ukulele and mandolin.
Okay. So you just really love the string
Yeah,
instruments.
there's something about stringed instruments that really appeals to me. And I really like teaching. I have to admit, when I was younger, maybe in my 20s, I taught some out of financial necessity.
Hmm.
And it wasn't what I wanted to do. I wanted to be out there playing. I didn't want to teach. I wanted to be playing. But over the years, I've well, it's hard for me to play as much as I used to,
Uh,
3 and 4 days a week. I'm 65 years
uh,
old. But I also see the value. There's a satisfaction in seeing students make progress and kind of mentoring students. But I learn things every week. When I
right.
teach, I'm constantly, it kind of puts me in a space where I'm receptive to learning because my young students, they don't always want to learn what a
Mm,
65-year-old grandpa plays. I
okay.
have It kind of makes me do a little deep dive
Right.
and get out of my comfort zone
Right.
and learn some new stuff, and it's really good for me.
That's
It's a
great.
There's a Zen concept. I don't get all new agey or anything, but there's a Zen concept called beginner's mind, and it's keeping yourself in a place where you're teachable and you're learning all the
Hmm.
time. I think that's what that teaching gives me, is that beginner's mind thing.
Wonderful.
Every week I'm learning new songs.
You're there to teach them, but they're also teaching you something.
I'm learning a lot.
That's great. And and I've always said that, we can learn from our children.
Oh,
I mean, I always felt like we can learn something every day anyway. But
you just have to be open.
yes, you have to be open, and I'm not. Some people walk around with that mindset that I know everything.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know everything. Things change every day, whether it's the weather. I mean, things just change every day, and there's always something we can learn.
Things are changing faster in our society now than they have in many decades.
That is true. So, what's next for Mr. Scotty?
Well,
Do you have any new performances coming up?
I'm really enjoying. I've been back playing with Big Pete Pearson for about 3 or 4 years now.
Oh,
I'm really, really getting more satisfaction out of that collaboration with Pete than I ever have. He's become like a father to me, and he really has. After almost 40 years, we're really close. So I'm really getting a lot of satisfaction from that relationship. Um,
that's great.
Teaching is going really well. I really love where I'm teaching. I think for a lot of musicians won't admit this, but it's rare to find band situations that are really optimal, that on all different, you're really having fun musically, you're learning things, you're making really good money, you like everybody you're playing with.
Right.
Those things you usually get maybe one.
Oh my goodness.
Maybe two. I'm getting all those things.
You're getting
now.
all of those.
Yeah, all of those. And I'm in Pete's band. I have my own blues band, True Flavor Blues, and I also play electric mandolin in an Irish punk band called the Saints of Erin. Some like throw a complete curveball into there. In all those situations, everybody's nice. I'm growing as a musician. The money's good. So I'm really enjoying playing.
That's awesome. And I think it has a lot to do with you being open, first of all, for change and learning something new. And you're
also,
receiving.
At my age, because I've been doing this a long time, I'm a lot more selective about the performances I do. So I only do things that are fun for me.
Good for you.
I don't feel compelled. A lot of times when I was younger, you kind of have to take everything you can get.
Right.
I raised 2 kids being a musician.
Right.
You can't be too picky.
That's true. Especially if you're dependent on it for your income.
Mm-hmm.
So where can our audience find you?
Well, that's a good question as well. When I play with the Saints of Erin, the Irish punk band, I performed with them last night. We're usually at Seamus McCaffrey's down on Monroe and First Avenue, downtown Phoenix.
Okay.
And we usually play there once a month. Big Pete Pearson's blues band, he performs at the West Side Blues and Jazz Club, a wonderful new club that's over at 59th Avenue in Bell.
Okay.
And he's there one Thursday and one Saturday every month.
Awesome. It was such a pleasure having you here with us today.
I went quick.
Yes,
That's
it did. And we look forward to having you back again to perform for us next time.
I can't wait.
Wonderful. And thank you for joining us today here at Desertwood Days, and we will catch you next time.